Can you see the board clearly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am.
Protonema
to অলপ ভালকে বুজাই দিবচোন।
Protonema বুজুৱাই নাই এতিয়ালৈকে। Teaching now. Talking about it now. First complete this. If it's over, please tell me, okay?
Ma'am. Ma'am, Liverwort তলত কি লিখিছে?
Hornworts. 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 Liverworts and hornworts are two examples of bryophytes, lower bryophytes. We'll be talking about classifications that are পঢ়িম আৰু clear হ'ব.
Okay, ma'am.
Apart from Protonema, is there anything that you did not understand? Please ask. Protonema is something that we have not discussed. We'll be talking about it now. Apart from that word, this is all about the things that we have discussed in the class yesterday. হয়নে?
হয় ম্যাম, বুঝি পাইছো সব।
So if it's over, please tell me. Please see the marking, okay? One generation, gametophytic, one generation, sporophytic. Marking to Sabah, put this way. Is it done?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let's go for the explanation now. So we are talking about bryophytes and the life cycle of bryophytes, and we know we have already talked about the term called as alternation of generation, right? This is something that is seen in this group. Alternation of generation মানে কি আছিল যে দুটা স্টেজ থাকিব, sporophytic ও থাকিব, gametophytic ও থাকিব. So right, so we have talked about this phase, yatra whole, right? Ultimately we know that they will produce spores. And last class আমি কি কৈছিলো যে the spores from the capsule will get dispersed and ultimately they will fall on the soil, and on the soil they will produce a baby plant which would be called as a gametophyte. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Now, in case of bryophytes, this chart talks about one more thing. It says that in case of bryophytes, spores bilakor duta type of germination থাকে. Eta germination and direct germination come, or eta germination would be called as indirect germination. So we have the spores. Some spores will directly germinate to form the gametophyte. Some spores will indirectly go in a way and then form the gametophyte. So we see two types of germination in case of bryophytes: direct germination, indirect. So if you, what is direct, what is indirect? Direct, if the spores fall from the soil, ultimately they form the baby plant in the soil directly. That is called as direct. Next, direct germination is a characteristic of lower bryophytes. If you talk about hornworts, liverworts, etc., these examples are examples of lower bryophytes, right? So classification of bryophytes, it is divided into lower and higher. When we talk about the highest bryophyte, obviously we remember key moss. Or no, highest bryophyte example key moss. No? So in case of higher bryophytes, especially in case of moss, what we see, once the spore falls to the ground, the spore germinates and ultimately it forms a multicellular filament-like structure. Coming to spore, spore ki hoy, unicellular, first point. Second, it is what haploid এটো আমি বুজি পাইছো next এই স্পৰটোৱে জার্মিনেট কৰি পেলাই কিছুমানৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত কি হয় বেবি প্ল্যান্টাল ফর্ম কৰে কিছুমানৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত স্পেশালি ইন moth what they will do যদি এটো স্পোর আছে ন স্পৰটোৱে আলটিমেটলি জার্মিনেট কৰি এডাল ফিলামেন্টৰ নিচিনা structure form koribo and this is what is called as protonema. So what is protonema? A multicellular filament-like structure that develops from the spore on the soil is called as protonema. Protonema is a structure that is seen only in case of mosses. Is the point clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next, so this is the spore. Spore will form the protonema. On the protonema, there will be certain types of buds that will develop. Right? So protonema to directly gametophyte to produce nokore. Protonema ki thakibো buds type structures thakibো এবিলাকক আমি কি বুলি কৈছো buds আৰু এই buds বিলাক when they will get detached from the protonema they will ultimately germinate into the gametophyte. So this is what was direct and indirect germination. Direct germination of কি হৈছিলে the spore directly germinated into the gametophyte. Indirect germination of কি হৈছে the spore produced a structure that is called as protonema. Protonema কি ফর্ম করেছিল buds ফর্ম করেছিল buds বিলাকে কি ফর্ম করেছে buds would germinate to form the gametophyte. Is the concept clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Next is if you talk about two types of germination, no, we'll take two cases. Eta case what you have a spore, the spore germinates into a gametophyte. In other case, you have a spore, the spore forms protonema, protonema forms buds, and buds germinate into a gametophyte. If you compare both the cases, which one is more advantageous? Advantage কোনটো বেশি স্পোরটো ডাইরেক্টলি গেমেটোফাইট ফর্ম কৰাটো এডভান্টেজ বেশি নে স্পোরটো প্রোটোনেমা ফর্ম কৰিব বাডস ফর্ম কৰিব তাৰ পিছত গেমেটোফাইট ফর্ম কৰাটো এডভান্টেজ বেশি
মছৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত advance
when we talk about I'm sorry please say
মছৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত advance হ'ব
এডভান্স ক্যারেক্টারটো মছৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত হয় মই কৈছে এডভান্টেজ কোনটো প্ল্যান্টালে বেশি এডভান্টেজিয়াস পজিশনত কোনটো কেস থাকে স্পোরটোৱে ডাইরেক্টলি জার্মিনেট কৰিলে তাৰ বেছি সুবিধা হ'ব নে স্পোরটোৱে বাডস ফর্ম কৰিলে বা প্রোটোনেমা ফর্ম কৰিলে তাৰ বেছি সুবিধা হ'ব And by the word advantage, what we understand, adult planter advantage ke adult planter jiman reproduce koribo paribo that is considered as its advantage. It is always when the spore will produce the protonema and the protonema will produce the buds that is considered as an advantageous case. কিহৰ কাৰণে কাৰণ এটা spore যেতিয়া মাটিত পৰিব সেই স্পোৰটোৰ পৰা plant কেইডাল produce হ'ব in case of indirect germination if you're talking about a spore will germinate into a plant one spore will produce only one gametophyte yes or no
yes ma'am
yes but in case of protonema if you see one spore will produce a filament filamentot কি থাকিব many buds থাকিব and many buds will produce what many gametophyte so plantalor কোনটো বেছি ভাল হ'ল one plant producing one baby, one plant producing many babies. Obviously, one plant producing many offsprings, right? So in that case, protonema through যদি develop হয় বা germination of spore হয় বা I mean gametophyte produce হয়, that is considered as an advanced character. Is the point clear?
yes ma'am
Yes, ma'am.
Now, from the examination point of view, what is the question that is asked? First question that is asked is protonema in moss. Or protonema is a structure that is a characteristic of. Protonema is a structure that's a characteristic of moss. Or protonema is found in bryophytes or certain types of higher bryophytes, etc. Second question, what is the protonema? A protonema is nothing but a multicellular filament. Who forms the protonema? A spore forms the protonema. Where can you see the protonema formation? You can see the protonema formation only in case of moss. Right? Now, after this, what we are going to do is, we are going to write certain points about protonema. Is this over? Can I rub the board?
yes ma'am
Eto মুছিব পাৰো? Okay, another point. Gametophytic generation and sporophytic generation. Gametophytic generation কোনখিনি কৈছো? All the stages that had N. If you look into the diagram properly, no, কিছুমান stage আমি twice N ploidy পাইছো, কিছুমান stage আমি N ploidy পাইছো. Gametophyte itself কি হয়? N. Anthridium কি হ'ব N, Archegonium N. So যিমানখিনি N phase আছে, that will represent what? The gametophytic generation. আৰু যিমানখিনি twice N phase আছে, that will represent the sporophytic generation. Is the concept clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am.
কোৱা
Ma'am, এটা স্পৰে এটা প্ৰটোনিমা তেনেকুৱা স্ট্ৰাকচাৰ ফৰ্ম কৰিব ন মানে বহুতটা স্পৰৰ পৰা বহুতটা তেনেকুৱা প্ৰটোনিমা ফৰ্ম হ'ব
বহুতটা স্পৰৰ পৰা বহুতটা প্ৰটোনেমা ফৰ্ম কৰিব আৰু বহুতটা প্ৰটোনেমাৰ ওপৰত বহুতটা বাডছ ফৰ্ম কৰিব
Yes,
আৰু
ma'am.
প্ৰত্যেকটা বাডে এটা লগা নতুন প্লান্ট ফৰ্ম কৰিব ক্লিয়াৰ হৈছে
Yes, ma'am.
ডাইৰেক্টত কি হৈছিলে যে অকল এটা স্পৰে এডালে প্লান্ট ফৰ্ম কৰিছিলে ইনডাইৰেক্টত কি হয় এডাল প্লান্টে এটা ইন্টাৰমিডিয়েট স্ট্ৰাকচাৰ ফৰ্ম কৰিব তাত কিছুমান বাডছ ডেভেলপ কৰিব প্ৰত্যেকটো বাডে এডাল এডাল ফৰ্ম কৰিব সো ইফ ইউ কম্পেয়াৰ দ্য নাম্বাৰ অফ প্লান্টছ ক'ত বেছি হ'ব যিমান বাডছ থাকে ইমান যে বাডছ থাকিলে বাডছ বিলাক কোনে প্ৰডিউচ কৰে এটা স্পৰেইটো প্ৰডিউচ কৰিছে ন
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
right so that is considered as an advantage protonema soil মই এতিয়া পইণ্টছ লিখি দিম আৰু নহলে সাইডত তোমালোকে যেটা লাইফ সাইকেলখন লিখিছিলা protonema সাইডতে লিখি দিয়া in the soil it will develop in কাৰণ স্পৰটো ক'ত পৰিব স্পৰটো সইলতে পৰিব clear
Yes, ma'am.
এটা পইণ্টছ কিছুমান লিখা any point এইটো মই বুজাই আছো right? So এইটা তো বুঝি পাইছো male gametes we have already written fertilization by the process of judeogamy. So when we talk about fertilization দুটা word we have to know. One is called as judeogamy and the other is called as cyclogamy. Right? What is judeogamy type of fertilization? If the fertilization occurs through the gametes and the gametes exhibit animal-like characteristics, that is what is called as judeogamy. So gamete ki koribo lagibo animal-like characteristic dekhabo lagibo. And if you talk about animal-like characteristic, the first point is it can move. Right? So if you're talking about
Yes,
male gametes is যদি নিজর জায়গার পৰা swim করি, it has to reach the female gamete, then what it is doing? It is moving, right? So if it moves, then it is called as judeogamy. It's moving all by itself. Now, if you compare the transfer of male gametes in case of angiosperms plants বিলাকতো male gametes থাকে না থাকে?
থাকে ম্যাম
Right? You have the pollen grain. Inside the pollen grain, you have the male gametes. In that case, male gametes বিলাকে নিজে swim কৰি পেলাই বা নিজে খোজকাঢ়ি পেলাই female gamete ওচৰত যায় জানো?
নাই ম্যাম
It is always they are carried by something. They are carried by
Yes.
what? They are carried by the pollen grain. They are carried by the pollen tube, etc., etc. Right? Now, when we talk about this condition, when the pollen grains or the pollen tube carries the male gamete, pollen tube has been considered a tube-like structure, which is could also be called as a siphon. Right? Siphon word to eta ase. Siphon mane ki tube-like structure. So male gametes either they will move all by themselves or they would be carried with the help of a siphon, that is the pollen tube. If they are carried with the help of a pollen tube, that type of fertilization is called as siphonogamy. And if they have to swim all by themselves, that is the animal-like nature, and that type of a fertilization is called as judeogamy. Other two words clear? Gamy mane ki? Gamy mane fusion or marriage. Judeo has come from the word zoology or animals. Clear?
yes ম্যাম
What about the rest of the students? You are completely mum in the class? Asan nai aru students?
Present, present.
Ma'am.
So what happened? Early in the morning sleeping or what?
No, ma'am.
Who kolo? Okay, I think this is clear now. Coming to oogamous type of sexual reproduction, I think this is also clear because we know that sexual reproduction could be of three types: isogamous, anisogamous, and oogamous, right? And all the three types could be seen in certain organisms. One particular could be seen in certain organisms, etc., etc. Details about this we have done in the Protista class. No, Protista যেতিয়া কৰিছিলো, যেতিয়া we have protist, we have done about it. Germination of spores, we understood. We'll write the next point.
ম্যাম ইনডাইৰেক্টৰ তলত কি লিখিছিলে ইন মোৰ নেকি
In moss. Moss. লিখি লোৱা এক্সপ্লেনেশ্যন মই কৰি আছো So what is the protonema? A protonema is a multicellular filament. Generally, what is the most common method of protonema formation? The protonema is directly formed from the spores. This type of protonema would be called as primary protonema. Protonema could be of two types, primary and secondary. A multicellular filament to directly produce spore produce, then it's called as primary in origin or primary protonema. Sometimes there are certain cases when the protonema or the multicellular filament is formed from the vegetative parts also. Spore বুলি ক'লে, it is the reproductive part, right? And if you're talking about vegetative parts like rhizoid, leaves, stems, etc., then that type of a protonema is called a secondary protonema. Is the point clear? So protonema, what we understood, it could be primary protonema or it could be secondary. Primary protonema ki hoy, directly develops from the spore. Secondary protonema ki hoy, it is developed from the vegetative part of the plant. Any doubts?
মেম মানে সেকেন্ডাৰী প্ৰোটোনিমাও তেনেকে আপোনাৰ আকৌ গেমেটোফাইটটো দিব পাৰে ন
Secondary protonema to if secondary protonema develop কৰে ন তাৰ ওপৰতো buds develop কৰিব আৰু buds বিলাকে নতুন নতুন gametophyte form কৰিব. The process is the same. The point of difference is who forms the protonema. Clear? A protonema to ক'ত form কৰিব? In the soil itself.
Ma'am. Leaf stem আৰু rhizodok কিয় মানে vegetative part বুলি কোৱা হয়?
Vegetative parts বুলি কোৱা হয় কাৰণ তাহাঁতে reproductionত একো help নকৰে. They don't help নকৰে নহয়. They don't take part in reproduction. Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. There was another one who was asking me something. কোনোবাই কিবা সুধিছিলে নেকি? Okay. Did you get the answer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Another point about protonema. Next, আকৌ protonema বুলি লিখিবা.
মেম ব্ৰাঞ্চ কেইটাৰ নাম কৈ দিব এবাৰ
হা it is Chloronema আৰু Rhizonema See whether the concept is clear or not. So in case of Bryophytes, what we have read, we have a spore, unicellular, form ki koribo, filament, আমি কি বুলি কম Protonema, Protonemar কিছুমান green branches থাকিব Protonema ক'ত form কৰিছে soilত আৰু কিছুমান non green branch থাকিব non green branch বিলাকক আমি কি কৈছো Rhizonema, they will act as a root and the green branch is called as Chloronema because obviously chlorophyll is present and they will have to prepare their own food because if the spore falls on the soil, it develops a structure. On that structure, buds will develop and buds will ultimately form the gametophyte. So it is very essential that, and since they are growing, food lagibo. So food kobra pabo. If it grew on the gametophyte itself, mother plant body reported that it gozile happen, they could have taken the food from the mother plant itself. But we know the Protonema develops on the soil. So they have to take up the nutrients, they have to make their own food. So if they have to make their own food, they have to have chloroplast. So chlorophyll tinglat branches, they are green in color, they will be preparing their own food. As far as absorption is concerned, absorption the non-grain branch that penetrates in the soil. Clear? কিবা doubts আছে নেকি?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Can I number one?
ডায়াগ্রামটো বনাই ম্যাম
Diagram হোৱা নাই?
মেম এটা কথা মেম
please ask.
সেকেন্ডাৰী প্ৰটোনিমাৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত যে আপুনি কৈছিলে যে ভেজিটেটিভ পাৰ্টস অফ দ্য প্লান্ট লাইক লিভছ ষ্টেম ৰাইজয়েড প্লান্ট মানে গেমেটোফাইটৰ কথা কৈছে নে স্পোৰোফাইটৰ আচ্ছা থ্যাংক ইউ
মেইন gametophyte ফৰ্ম কৰিব পাৰিব right so gametophyte either spore form কৰিব spore form কৰি protonema form কৰিব আৰু কেতিয়াবা gametophyte directly gametophyte কি হয় যে n হয় ন ultimately তাহাতে এটা filamentous structure form কৰিব protonema তো n হয় Ploidy of protonema কি হয় right so protonema could be seen forming from the spore or it could be seen forming from vegetative parts also if it is formed from the vegetative parts it is called as secondary if it is formed from the spore it is called as primary clear
yes ma'am
is the diagram over
ম্যাম ডায়াগ্রামের একেবারে তলের অঙ্কটা কি লিখেছে এটা রাইজোনেমা
এটো?
হ্যাঁ
Rhizonema, Rhizonema মেইন ডালক আমি কি কম প্রোটোনেমা তার যোনটো নন গ্রিন ব্রাঞ্চ তাক আমি রাইজোনেমা কম যোনটো গ্রিন ব্রাঞ্চ তাক আমি ফ্লোৰোনেমা কম অন দ্য গ্রিন ব্রাঞ্চ কি ডেভেলপ কৰিব বাডস বিলাক ডেভেলপ কৰিব ক্লিয়াৰ
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we were writing the points. Ito point number kiman asile? Germination in moss. Baru je asile continue koriba. Next point. Kiman hobo?
7.
Konba kose 4, konba kose 7. Okay. These are mote just keep writing. What is the unique point about bryophytes? The unique point about bryophytes is the sporophyte is dependent on the gametophyte. Clear? It's a point I mark rakiboli. So up till here, what we have discussed is we have talked about bryophytes in general, and we have talked about alternation of generation in case of bryophytes, right? And germination of bryophytes. After this, we have to talk about classification of bryophytes. If this is over, heading koriba classification of bryophytes. Is it over? So if you talk about classification of bryophytes, bryophytes are classified in under 3 classes: Hepaticopsida, Anthocerotopsida, and Bryopsida. Right? So we have a lower bryophyte and we have the highest bryophyte. Bryopsida could also be considered as MUSCI, MUSCI, because it consists or it is a kingdom of or it is a group of mosses. So Bryopsida are as far as Hepaticopsida is concerned, one group of bryophytes looking at the morphological structure, no? Bryophyte morphology to chemical, plant gametophyte morphology chemical. It looks like almost the liver, human liver junto shape hoy no chemical dekhe. So that group of plants is called as Hepaticopsida. Is the point understood?
Yes.
Plants বিলাক কেনেকুৱা হ'ব liver shaped হ'ব, so they are called as Hepaticopsida. Next we have something called as Anthocerotopsida. Anthocerotopsida আৰু এটা নাম আছে, they are called as Hornworts. Hornwort কিহৰ কাৰণে কয়? Because they look like a horn. Now what can you understand by a horn? Animals বিলাকৰ horn থাকে ন, শিং থাকে. That is a
Yes,
horn. We are not talking about the horn of a car. Okay? So they look like the horn, and so they are called as hornworts, or they are also called as Ancestor. Similarly, Hepaticopsida is also called as liverworts. একেটাই বস্তু। অলপ আগতে liverworts example লিখিছিল ন? Indirect germination of. So liverwort, nothing but Hepaticopsida, nothing but example of a lower bryophyte. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll draw a chart, comparative chart. তিনটা কলম বনাই পেলাই চাৰ্ট এখন লিখা। So points বিলাক লিখি যাওঁ, যোনবিলাক points important মই কৈ দিম।
I mean, Bryopsida in second point, what you have written.
Okay, just 1 minute. Green and folios, FOLIOSE, folios. Folios মানে leaf like. Any points লিখি লোৱা, next we'll continue. Okay, so first point important, liverworts, নাম গিটা important, hornworts and musty, right? Next is leaves absent, leaves present. Coming to this word, the body is dorsiventral. Dorsiventral means কি? What is dorsiventral? You have a dorsal side and you have a ventral side. তার মানে উপৰটো আৰু তলটো বেলেগ বেলেগ হয়. Right? That is what is called as dorsiventral. The upper side and the lower side are morphologically different. That is what is called as dorsiventral. Right? And thalloid we understand. Thallus-like structure, no? Echo specific protruding parts নাই. That is what is called as thalloid. Dorsiventral and thalloid, but in this case, it is green and foliose. I have written the word foliose because moss bilakot ki thake, leaves thake. Right? Foliose is leaf-like. That is what is called as foliose. As far as leaves are concerned, absent and present. Rhizoids, unicellular branch, we have already written this point. Scales are present. What is scale? A brown color, round structure. That is called a scale. That is non-green in color. Right? Next, in case of sporophyte, simple sporophyte, little bit complex and highly complex. One point to be taken into consideration is in case of Anthoceros, seta is absent. ইয়াতে sporophyte is simple of continuing কৰিবাচোন. Point number 5 or তলত লিখিবা হা. Are you understanding where you have to write after point number 5? It's not point number 6.
Ma'am,
Say.
পাঁচ নম্বৰ পইণ্টটো যে লিখিছে ব্ৰায়োপছিডাৰ তলত হাইলি কমপ্লেক্স, এইটো মানে তাৰ মানে ফুড সিটা ক্যাপসুল তিনিটা প্ৰেজেন্ট থাকিব নেকি?
গোটেইকেইটা প্ৰেজেন্ট থাকিব. So food seta and capsule আমি কিছুমান examples of Hepatic obsida পাম. For example, if you talk about Markensia, no? Markensia to আমি food seta capsule পাম. Right? কিন্তু গোটেইবিলাক groups of আমি complex বস্তু নাপাও. যেনেকে we have given an example of Rixia, Rixia is an example of a lower bryophyte is found hepatic obsida. কিন্তু তাহাঁতৰ এই গোটেই তিনিটা part নাথাকে. কি থাকে? Only capsule. So question আহিব পাৰে, sporophyte consisting of just the capsule is a characteristic of. It's a characteristic of Rixia or it's a characteristic of lower bryophyte. ঠিক তেনেকে যেনেকে Anthoceros কি নাই? Seta নাই. Rixia কি নাই? Foot আৰু seta নাই. Right? These are the points that you have to consider. And if you're talking about moss, সব বিলাক mossতে তিনটা part দেখা পাম. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Next, আৰু কেইটামান points আছে continue কৰিম. First complete, then we'll explain. If it is over, please say.
Ma'am, Marchantia কি হব? No sporophyte to made up of only capsule নেকি Marchantia ক্ষেত্ৰত? Marchantia ক্ষেত্ৰতো মানে sporophyte is made up of only capsule তেনেকুৱাই হবনে?
No. It is only that statement goes only for Rixia. Marchantia সব থাকিব। সেই ডায়াগ্ৰামটো যে NCERT বুকত আছে N3DO4 Archegonial4 চাবাচোন।
Okay.
What you have to remember, sporophyte made of only the capsule, only in case of Rixia. Is it over?
Do you know what group যেটো মানে Anthoceraria এটো কিতাবত নাই
Ancestors কিতাবত নাই
এনে কি মানে
তোমাক মাপটো it's cracking মই ধৰিব পৰা নাই তুমি আকৌ এবাৰ সোধাচোন কি কৈছা I could not get you আৰু এবাৰ সোধা Hello কি সুধিছা মই গম পোৱা নাই
ম্যাম 2 নম্বৰ গ্ৰুপ যেটো Bryophytes
হা
এটো NCERT বুকত ভালকে দিয়া নাই নেকি
NCERT বুকখন মই পঢ়িছো নে তুমি পঢ়িছা
মই পঢ়িছো
তেতিয়াহলে পাইছা নে নাই
ইমান ভালকে তো পঢ়া নাই
NCERT বুকত এনেও ভালকে নিদিয়ে ভালকে দিয়ে নেকি NCERT বুকত it is just a lie Hornwort is a word that you will see in your NCERT book Ancestor as an example you will see it in as a NCERT book but why is it called as a hornwort horn to kuntu part of the body looks like a horn this is something that's going to be present in the notes so notes obviously basic থাকিব no NCERT bookত কে কিন্তু questions আহিলে কিন্তু notes ৰ পৰা আহিব so you have to read this only right any point that you did not understand okay so ekini points likhato ho gol coming about these 2 points so columella and elaters kuno muk eku question khudha nai do you understand what a columella is and a elater is ki hoy very good Very good. So inside these 2 points are related with the capsule part, no? Ami jano the plant body is a gametophyte, it will produce a sporophyte, sporophyte will have a capsule. Inside the capsule, no? When we talk about the capsule or ami ki koisilu spores ase, right? Spores are the reproductive organs or spores are the reproductive parts, they are the fertile parts, etc. One point that you need to remember is eta capsular bhitorot it is not only the fertile cells only that they are present there are certain type of sterile cells also spores bilakok ami ki buli kom fertile cells buli kom the fertile cells they will have sterile cells one example of a type of a sterile cell is columella columella কি হয় এই spores বিলাকক যে খোৱা বস্তু লাগিব ন কোনোবাইটো খোৱা বস্তু দিব লাগিব that conducting tissues that parenchyma tissues take জুনে conduction কৰে that part is called as columella as far as the diagram of columella is concerned আমি moss capsular diagram and then at that time we'll draw the columella as of now columella to কেনেকুৱা if suppose we are talking about this as a capsule no capsule to part right? Ekinik ami ki buli kau columella. So this is the sterile part. Aru tar pisot ki thakibo fertile part. Tak ami ki buli kom spores. So this central mass that is called as columella. Tahat ki hoy? Sterile tissues. Clear? Next, another term that is called as elaters. Elaters are certain structures that are present inside the capsule that helps in the dispersal of the spores. So capsule to dehiswar pisot the spores needs to get dispersed. So help koribo kisuman enekwa type structures thake, right? Pointed structures thake, hair-like structures thake. Heblake ki kore spore to disperse korise. So this is what is called as elaters. So in case of a capsule, elaters thakibo, elaters bilake ki koribo spore to disperse. It helps the spores to be spreading to dispersal of the spore. It's a structure that helps in the dispersal of a spore. Present here, present here. As far as pseudo-elater is concerned, pseudo-elater is also the same as elater itself, right? Elater function ki dispersal of the spore, pseudo-elater function ki dispersal of the spore. The only difference is in its name. One is called as a elater, the other is called as a pseudo-elater. Why is it called as a pseudo-elater? Because it develops from other tissue. Eta particular cell পৰা develop কৰিলে elater বুলি কয়, এটা বেলেগ cell পৰা develop কৰিলে এটা pseudo-elater বুলি কয়. You don't have to go into details. ইমান details ত নালাগে, right? So columella capsule থাকিব, capsule এটা particular cell পৰা যদি elater to develop কৰে, that is called as a elater. এটা বেলেগ cell পৰা যদি develop কৰে, that is called as a pseudo-elater. It is just a difference in its origin. As far as the function is concerned, both of them helps in the dispersal of a spore. Next, coming to the most advanced type of bryophytes, yeah.
Columella to akolo bujai dibosun.
Columella to ma olop pisot diagram wise bujai dim. As of now ki koisu jetia eta capsule thake, ei gutei capsule to bhitorot amar we have a tendency to believe যে gutei to bhitorot spores e thake. কিন্তু গোটেইটো ভিতৰত spores নাথাকে, ঠিক আছে? এই মাজৰ central portion খিনি এইখিনি sterile tissues হয়। এই portionটোক আমি কি বুলি কওঁ columella। এই columella দ্বাৰা কি কৰে চোৱা, এই columella part টো it is a part of the capsule, right?
Yes.
এই বস্তুটো কি হয় সেটাৰ লগত connected হৈ থাকে, ফুটৰ লগত connected হৈ থাকে, ক'ত develop কৰিব gametophyte খনত। So ultimately খোৱা বস্তু বা পানী যেতিয়া যাব ন, তো এনেকে এনেকে গৈ তাহাতে এইটোৰে spores বিলাকত যাব। বুজি পাইছা? So columella reproduction ত help নকৰে, কিন্তু transportation ত help কৰে।
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So what is columella? A group, a mass of sterile tissues inside the capsule is called as columella.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Next, talking about elaters. Elaters are structures that helps in the dispersal of the spores. If you see a capsule, that elaters thakibo, yatu ase, but in case of moss, the elaters are absent. If elaters are absent, that does not mean moss or capsule or they will not have anything that will help in the dispersal. They will have a structure that is called as peristome teeth. So question hai, are elaters present in a moss capsule? Elaters are absent in a moss capsule. Instead of elaters, what is the presence of peristome teeth? Why is it called as teeth? Because structure to amar jeneke daat ase no, daator nisina dekhat eneka pointed capsule to bhitorot duta row thakibo, right? And the two rows looks like teeth, and so this is called as peristome teeth. What is the function of a peristome teeth? Exactly the same function as elaters. Elaters are due to function, peristome teeth or dispersal of the spores. Can the question to ki janibo lagibo, are elaters present in moss? No, elaters are not present in moss. Next question I go for it. Peristome teeth is a characteristic of, it is a characteristic of moss capsule.
Yes.
Clear? Okay. Next is one point about anthoceros, no? Anthoceratops bilakok ami ki buli koise, hornwort buli koise, no? Anthoceratops are also called as K. Hornworts. Why they are called as such? Because they look like horn. Means they will have the gametophyte, right? Main plant body to obviously gametophyte hobo. After fertilization, they will produce a sporophyte. Sporophyte to ki thakibo, fruit to thakibo, seta to absent. We have already written the point. And if the fruit is present, seta is absent, what is left behind is the capsule. Capsule, etu fruit. Or just eta cell. এনেকে থাকিব সেই সেলটোৰ পৰা ক্যাপসুলটো ডেভেলপ কৰিব সো ইফ ইউ লুক ইনটু দা প্লান্ট ডালে কেনেকা থাকিব এনেকা এনেকা হৰ্ন থাকিব right it looks like horns and so they are called as hornworts who forms the horn the capsule looks like a horn and so they are called as hornworts is the point clear clear no not clear Okay. In case of Bryopsida, what we have used is a word called as folios. Remember? Next, what we said, sporophyte consists of all the three parts: fruit, seta, and capsule. So, if you talk about leaves, no. Main body gametophyte. This is the fruit, right? Seta to bhalke ami iman capsule, and these are leaves. As we have already written, leaves are present in case of moss, right? Since leaves are present, they can prepare their own food, and so they are actually dependent on the gametophyte. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this was all about the classification of bryophytes. Bryophytes divided into three classes. This is Hepaticopsida, Ancestor, and Bryopsida, or liverworts, hornworts, and mosses or mosses. Next. Okay, we are writing certain points. This is a very important point. So question ahead, identify the algal character of Ancestor. Right? As we know, we are talking about the plant kingdom, and we know primitive plants or advanced plants like they are gradually evolving. So if you talk about the primitive plants, then obviously we are talking about what? We are talking about algae, right? From algae onwards, the next group has evolved, that is bryophyte. So as we have already said about this, no? If you are talking about algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms, and angiosperms, what we know? Algae কিছুমান lower members থাকিব, কিছুমান higher members থাকিব. Similarly, bryophytes will also have certain lower members and higher members. Similar is in all the cases. So these higher members, these lower members, obviously কি থাকিব, কিছুমান characteristics দেখাব, similar characteristics. And the presence of these similar characteristics talks about evolution. So one point that we can hear about is, from algae, the bryophytes have developed one point আমি confidently ক'ব পাৰো is the presence of alien-like character in Ancestors. What is Ancestors? A type of a bryophyte. Bryophyte of eta alien-like character আছে. What is the type or what is the character we are talking about? We are talking about the presence of one chloroplast and one pyrenoid. Remember the word pyrenoid. Pyrenoid কি আছিলে? Reserved materials থাকে ন? Proteins as well as starch, right? Yeah, so we have talked about different types of chloroplasts in case of algae. Algal chloroplast boli ami পঢ়িছিলো. For example, if you talk about Chlamydomonas, it has a cup-shaped chloroplast. If you talk about Spirogyra, it has a spiral-shaped chloroplast. We have reticulate chloroplast, disc-shaped chloroplast, etc., etc. I think you remember that. Right? Our chloroplast কি থাকিব? Reserved materials থাকিব, that is called as the pyrenoid. Plants to plants, the number of pyrenoids may keep on varying. If suppose we are talking about Spirogyra to pyrenoid থাকিব, but what is the number? Many. If you are talking about chloroplast to pyrenoid থাকিব, what is the number? Single. Right? So chloroplast to single pyrenoid থাকে, Ancestor to single pyrenoid থাকে, chloroplast to single sorry. In case of algae also, yeah, chloroplast to single, not chloroplast. I'm talking about Chlamydomonas. Chlamydomonas to কি থাকে? Cup-shaped chloroplast থাকে, right? That is one chloroplast. Ancestor one chloroplast. Chlamydomonas one pyrenoid present. Ancestor one pyrenoid present. So this is the algal-like character that is seen in case of Ancestor. Question ahead, so please read this carefully. And it's clear is that? What is the algal character seen in Ancestor? The algal character seen in Ancestor is the presence of one chloroplast with one pyrenoid. Right? Next, coming to point number 2. ইয়াৰ ওপৰতো question আহে. If you notice, liverworts বিলাকত কি নাথাকে? Leaves নাথাকে. কিন্তু you have an exception. Question ahe, identify the leafy member of liverwort. We know liverworts at leaves e nathake, kintu eta exception. Porella is a liverwort which has leaves. So exceptions are important question ahe, so you have to know this. Third point is simple. Bryophytes of jiman bilak bryophytes ase, simplest sporophyte কাৰ থাকে? Simplest sporophytes in case of Rixia থাকে. This was point number 3. Then go to point number 4. One example of a liverwort is Marketia.
গেছেন
Iman details important নহয়. What is important? Markensia reproduces asexually with the help of gamete. What is gamete? It is a type of a asexual bud, right? কেতিয়াবা question আহে, what is the shape? It is a H-shaped structure. So gamete বিলাক দেখাত এনেকুৱা হয়. So question ahead, gamete cup, the presence of gamete cup is a characteristic of, the presence of gamete cup is a characteristic of Markensia. Sorry. Just a rough diagram. Right? So in case of bryophytes, if you're talking about the first group, that is liverwort, we have a particular example that is called as Markensia. Markensia, they reproduce asexually by asexual buds called as gamete. These are H-shaped structure. Right? Gamete bilakot kot thakbo, a buds bilak kot form kore inside a gamma cup, right? And this gamete, due to asexual buds, obviously they will give rise to gametophyte. The male Markensia, female Markensia. Male Markensia ki thakibo entridiophore, female Markensia ki thakibo archegoniophore. As we have already mentioned, what is important is the question has been asked from diagrams also. So diagrammatic session two diagrams will be given. You have to identify which one is entridiophore, which one is archegoniophore. I think we have said that. We can identify this is called as archegoniophore, this type is called as the entridiophore. I think this is all for today. In the next class, we are going to talk something about the moss capsule. That will be the end of the Bryophytes, and we'll start with Pteridophytes. Do you have any doubts?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay, then thank you for today.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.